Hello everyone, this is Kat. Welcome back to My Hero Academia Podfics. Today will be the continuation of Paper Agency. This will be part 4. Again, just like the previous few times, we are starting off with a conversation between Red Tower and Watchman. Where are you? I'm on the train. BF stayed over and I walked him to his parents/teacher's house. He's got a follow-up interview scheduled later and needs some fresh clothes. He's job hunting. He graduated just the other day. But college, though? Never mind. I forgot about the Stepfords. Of course he's got himself job hunting. You want to hire him. We've got the budget and no shortage of work for someone who can keep their trap shut. I'll ask after I tell him. He's good. We'd be lucky to have him, but I don't know how he'd feel about dating his boss. Nobody else in this industry seems to have a problem with it. You are the guy who keeps saying just because everyone else does it doesn't mean you should, right? Yeah, about drugs and stupid shit, not about evidence that supports my argument. We gotta talk about domestic security for him anyways. It'd be almost easier if he worked at the agency and commuted with you. He'll be fine. He can take care of himself, and he's already got an opportunity he seems pretty excited about. Fine, but that shoebox you live in needs to go. No arguments. Who is this? Hilarious. No, BF wants to move in. I'm thinking about it, but we'd need more space, and I just realized that I can do that now. It's weird. It might be good to not sleep in the same room as my kitchen. Always nice. Hey, I invited some of the other recruits in for some FaceTime around when the NG is coming in. NG? Oh, new guy. Yeah, that's fine. After today, I'll be around more often. About fucking time. While you're in, can you do something about the lights on the second floor? I've given up. Are they flickering again? Like we're a set for a fucking horror movie. I'll try. We might need a professional, though. Pulling in at the station. I'll see you in 2. This time, Hitoshi wore civilian clothes on the train and carried his costume in his duffel. If he signed today, then Tower had said that he could use their vault to store it. He knew he was going to sign unless the offer was insultingly bad, so he'd brought his spare charger and battery packs. He noticed the crime ticker was live when he arrived, but the big sign was still in drapes. The door was working, though, and someone had actually painted the walls in the main level. What do you think? Tower asked as he strode in from the back. It looks nice. I like the dark wall behind the front desk, Hitoshi replied honestly. It'll be better once the fumes are out. You're telling me, Tower scratched the back of his neck. Wish we could leave the door open, but that'll just be rolling out the red carpet for idiots. We're starting to get people cruising, just looky-loos, but that won't be the case forever. Did you find any other patrollers? Hitoshi asked. He didn't mind rustling out the new kind of low-level thug that liked to haze new agencies, but those fights tended to get a lot of media attention. Yeah, I've got some potentials coming in soon. Once you and Watchman get acquainted, we'll do some introductions, maybe suit up and find some trouble for a shakedown mission. Tower shrugged. It'll depend on how well I think you guys will mesh. Did you talk to Oravity? Yeah, that's the one. Tower nodded with approval. That other guy you recommended, he'll be here too. Hitoshi hadn't recommended Watchtower to anyone else, but he'd discussed the job in a group chat, so that other guy could be one of his unemployed classmates. He'd just have to wait and see. Anyone in his class who'd made it to graduation would be a decent enough co-worker, and he wasn't about to wreck the opportunity for them. Oravity's an excellent hero, he said and looked around for his real objective. Is Watchman here? Tower chuckled and waved him towards the back. Yeah, he's upstairs cussing out some wiring. I'll show you up. The stairs were bare, but had been carpeted at some point. Someone had gotten as far as sanding the steps and pulling up all the tack boards, but hadn't finished them. There was another biometric door at the top of the stairs. Aizawa would approve of the multiple choke points. Hitoshi didn't know how likely an enemy assault would be, but it was probably more likely in Jada than most places. Someone had put more work into the second level, which looked to be a big meeting and lounge space framed by what were either going to be offices or individual crash rooms. The floors and walls were done, and someone had started hanging up big black and white prints of first-gen heroes. There wasn't much else in there aside from draped couches and a ladder in the middle of the room. A man sat atop the ladder, with his shoulders and chest hidden inside the drop ceiling. Hey, Watchman! Tower went over to brace the ladder. You at a stopping point? Just a sec. Hitoshi froze at a very, very familiar voice that floated out of the ceiling. Let me wrap this wire and I'll come down. Hitoshi could feel his pulse pounding in his eardrums as he tried to convince himself that he was wrong, but he knew the red sneakers that Watchman had on, and he'd been the one to wash those paint-splattered cargo shorts with the torn knee last week. His entire body flushed hot as a familiar head of fluffy green hair emerged from the gap in the ceiling. Izuku ducked down to grab a grimy rag to wipe his black-streaked hands with. "Sorry, I had to replace the ballast in the—" His smile faded, and his eyes flew wide as he came to the realization that Hitoshi had arrived at. "Toshi?" he whispered. "Toshi," Tower echoed, looking back and forth between them. "Izu?" Hitoshi hardly even recognized his own voice. "This had better have been what your big romantic reveal was about, or I'm going to be fucking pissed." Yes, I mean, this isn't how I planned it, but," Izuku squeaked. "What are you—" He turned slowly towards Tower, who looked like he was taking a comical step back. "Hideo?" he growled in a voice that no one would have argued with. Tower seemed to be caught up in the middle of his own dramatic revelation. "Toshi. Hitoshi. Oh, shit." He swallowed and pasted the biggest fake smile on his face that Hitoshi had ever seen and started to inch backwards with his hands up. "Hey, what a crazy coincidence." "Hideo, I had a plan." Izuku threw the rag at Tower and nailed him right in the face. "I bought candles." "I didn't know." Tower wasn't even pretending anymore. He was a 200-pound bruiser who breathed out lasers, but he was ducking away from an 18-year-old that was maybe half his size threatening him with a dirty cloth. It became clear in that moment who wore the pants at Watchtower. "I swear, I didn't fucking know." A loud chime sounded from downstairs and Tower went for it, like a life preserver. "That'll be the others. I gotta go let 'em in. You guys talk." He bolted for the door and slammed it shut behind him. "Oh, man." Izuku jumped down from the ladder, looking miserable. "This is not how I wanted this conversation to happen. So sorry, Hitoshi." Hitoshi didn't know what he was feeling. Was he angry? Was he sick? He didn't know what was real and what wasn't. "Why didn't you tell me? How long?" he rasped. "How long what?" Izuku patted himself down until he came up with his wallet. He pulled out a familiar blue-backed card and handed it over. "Do you mean this?" He accepted it and stared at it. It had the same official holographic watermark as his own. The name line read Watchman, and the date of issue was... Hitoshi blinked, read it again, and looked back up at his boyfriend. "This was issued 2 days ago." Right before he found Izuku having an emotional breakdown on his floor, clutching an envelope like it was the only real thing left in the world. "Oh." Izuku nodded and took it back. "I wasn't a pro before that," he said softly, and turned the license over again in his hand. "Did you know that you don't need to be a licensed hero to open an agency? You need to be a hero on a roster to get anything done, but a lot of the big Tokyo firms are actually owned by civilians." "You were a vigilante?" Hitoshi couldn't see how. Izuku barely had time to sleep. "What? No, no." Seeing panicked Izuku flailing actually came as a relief to Hitoshi. The wobbly chin that followed was far less welcome. He sniffed and wiped at his eyes. "Oh, man, I had a whole speech. I was going to ask you to come up to the roof of my building. I was going to be waiting in costume with candles so I could take off my mask, and it was going to be really nice." That did sound really nice, like something out of a movie, and all at once Hitoshi felt cheated. It was better than being mad, he supposed. Still. Hey. He edged forward and cautiously wrapped his sniffling boyfriend into a gentle hug. Izuku returned the hug, clinging to the back of Hitoshi's shirt. This was a pro hero. "You're a hero." That was only just sinking in. Izuku was a pro. They were both pros. His vague plan of blackmailing someone into hiring Izuku at an agency in a support role, or maybe putting him through school, had been blown away and replaced with a very real and surprisingly appealing possibility of being able to form a hero team with his lover. Holy shit. Yeah. Izuku's watery laugh was muffled by Hitoshi's chest. Holy shit, it doesn't seem real. Why, though? Maybe it was a dumb question. He'd seen what Izuku's future looked like. If he had a chance at something, anything better, then of course he would have loved to take it. Izuku was quiet for a while. There's a point that comes after when you realize all of your dreams, even the safe ones, are being held out of reach, when it becomes clear that you've got two options. Give up or go after one anyway. He chuckled low and without mirth. If everything is impossible, then you might as well just go for what you want most. Maybe Hitoshi did understand. Hadn't he done something similar, life would have been easier if he'd settled for Shiketsu or any other academy. Neither school was a powerhouse factory like UA, and maybe had better facilities for non-physical quirks that were similar to his, and you could have excelled at Shiketsu, but he wanted to prove himself at the most distinguished level that he could manage, so he forged ahead at UA anyway. The increased difficulty curve had actually appealed to him. He'd thought that if he could cut it at UA, then no one could ever question his credentials as a hero, not even his mother or father. That hadn't quite been true. It turned out that his parents just didn't change their minds once they'd made a decision, no matter what proof he presented them with, but he'd found a new family instead and had become a better hero because of it. I actually did try to go to high school, Izuku said softly. It was one of those public schools. They let me get through the whole admissions process. My mom and I got uniforms and books and everything. Then on the first day it turned out that I wasn't on the class roster. There wasn't even a desk for me. The school office wouldn't do anything about it. They said it was a clerical error, and the teacher walked me off campus. He told me to try again next year, but the way he said it... He took a deep, shuddering breath. My mom, she didn't believe me when I told her what happened. It's not all on her, and I think I understand now why she thought the things she did. My dad, he did a lot of crazy stuff whenever he was around, and left her to deal with all the fallout after, Izuku explained. I didn't tell her about all the other schools I applied to. It was so surreal. I didn't even know how to explain what was going on. I was ashamed, and part of me thought it was my fault somehow. I think she was cleaning up when I was at school and found this notebook I'd started, trying to figure out ways to become a hero without going through the vocational program. I never planned to skip it, but the timing couldn't have been worse. I came home and had to tell her that I wasn't really enrolled. To her, it looked like I was lying. She was furious and upset. We had a huge fight about it, and she said that if I was going to throw my whole future away because of a childish fantasy. He went quiet, but Hitoshi could fill in the blanks. She'd told him to leave. Maybe it had been a bluff, and maybe it hadn't. Okay, but how? Izuku nodded into his shoulder. I wasn't a vigilante, he said as he pulled back to wipe his eyes on his forearm. I had a provisional license before now. Hitoshi felt like the questions were piling up under his skin with every answer he got. You need a school sponsor to take the provisional exam, and you need a provisional license to take a pro exam. Izuku just shook his head. No, agencies can sponsor exam candidates too, he explained. They don't really advertise it. It's a sort of backdoor policy for legitimizing vigilantes. I took advantage of it. It's why I wasn't at your graduation ceremony, even though I really, really wanted to be there. They scheduled the exam for the same day. It's how I got hurt. He admitted that bit very quietly. Tower was allowed to participate because it was a team thing and there was an uneven number of candidates. He used my shoulder to get over a wall. All of a sudden, Hitoshi remembered Mike talking about Red Tower, the vigilante who'd suddenly gone legit, and how odd it was that he'd opened an agency so late in his career after being underground for so long. He remembered Tower himself saying, starting an agency was a means to an end. We were going to dissolve it once we got what we were after. He felt like he had more pieces to the puzzle in front of him, and they were slowly coming together. You got Tower to go pro and then mainstream, he realized. But why? We were testing a hypothesis, actually. He took the pro exam to see if it could be done. Watchtower didn't exist yet, but he had enough connections to get another agency to sponsor him. I had more hoops to jump through, but we first had to know if it was even possible. Izuku shrugged. Once he was a pro, we opened Watchtower. It was a paper agency, but that's all we needed to get me into the provisional exam. After that, I needed a quota of documented fieldwork hours to make up for not being a part of a vocational program. This was insane. Then why did you need to work so much? Pros make money. He knew Izuku hadn't been faking his jobs. Hitoshi'd seen him working. He'd visited Izuku while he was on the jobs. Maybe you could sneak onto a construction site and pretend like you belonged there, but bookstores, restaurants, you couldn't just blend in there. You needed key cards, uniforms, computer logins, and software training to get anything done. Watchman had been around for years. Surely he's been getting paid for it. The amount of work involved with balancing a hero career, even at a provisional level, with the amount of jobs he'd had just hurt to think about. Semi-pros don't make that much. Actually, the government didn't reimburse my hours at all. They're supposed to be work-study students, after all. Tower skimmed off his paychecks to pay me, but he didn't have a lot to spare, and Izuku scratched the back of his head. You have no idea how much you overhear as a menial laborer. You have to make your own work and intelligence, and I've come across a lot of leads by being a fly on the wall in public places. Tower's been on me to build a network of informants, though, so that's where a lot of my extra income has been going. CIs don't work for free. I have an operational budget now, and I don't need to spend more time following up on leads that we already have, so that's why I quit my part-time jobs. Okay, that sort of made sense in a terrifyingly overcommitted kind of way. He could actually see Izuku doing it even. He had a way of blending into a crowd. Hitoshi was always aware of him, because you generally were when it came to your loved ones, but other people tended to dismiss him because he was plain and inoffensive. It was dumb. Hitoshi knew Izuku was intelligent and had a knack for being able to draw accurate conclusions based on very little information. Sometimes he'd wondered if it was actually a very subtle quirk in action, but Izuku seemed very sure of his own quirklessness. Maybe they were all lucky he'd been too stubborn to turn to a villain. That would have been a very easy option for someone who'd been so thoroughly rejected from daylight society. How did you and Tower even meet? Hitoshi was afraid of the answer. It was after I left home. Izuku dropped his gaze. I didn't really have a place to go, and I spent a while sleeping rough. Hideo found me getting mugged from my phone and took me under his wing. I slept on his couch for a while until I could afford my own place. That sounded sketchy. Tower didn't seem like he'd had ulterior motives for taking in a homeless teen, but Hitoshi was glad he did. If they'd never met, he didn't really want to think about it. Are we okay? Izuku wet his lips. Were they? Were they okay? Hitoshi had to think about it. You didn't answer one question. He found himself saying he knew that whatever the answer was, he was probably going to end up forgiving Izuku. He didn't know how not to, but he didn't know how easy it was going to be. Why didn't you tell me before now? Izuku's lips thinned. I didn't tell anyone. Hideo knows because he helped me come up with the plan, but we don't talk about it ever. I got my license on a technicality. The restrictions on who can apply to become a hero aren't defined by law, just by the Hero Commission's best judgment, so they can make whatever rules they want, so long as it isn't outrageous that people would start paying attention. The handbook doesn't actually explicitly forbid quirkless people from becoming heroes, but heroes have lost their licenses before when the Commission found out they'd lost their quirks. Hitoshi felt a little sick hearing that. He knew that the Hero Commission rules were weird and often arbitrary, but he hadn't known they were able to just make them up unilaterally. Izuku kept explaining. The Commission doesn't track what heroes have what quirks because they can't guarantee the security of that kind of database. Give them credit, they take the private identities of the pros very seriously. The public quirk registry is notoriously insecure, and if someone was able to cross-reference the two databases, they could dox every pro hero in the country. They don't even ask at the exams, because there could be recording equipment there, but if word got out that a quirkless person was working toward taking the pro exam, it'd be the work of minutes before some concerned troll would update their handbook. They'd have all they need to filter candidates and make them certify that they had a quirk without specifying what it was. As he paused, he looked up and met Hitoshi's eyes. You're the only person I was ever tempted to tell. At first, it was because I was scared. That's why I didn't. I thought that you might leave eventually. I know I'm not the best boyfriend. I'm always busy, and I'm not good at sharing the hard stuff. Oh, bullshit. Hitoshi shook his head. He couldn't even pick a place to start pulling that argument apart. They worked. They were both busy, but they made time for each other when it was hard. Would he ever find that with someone else? Did he want to? No, both times. I wouldn't leave you. If I didn't walk out over this, how could you think I ever would? I know. Izuku's grip on his shirt tightened, giving immediate lie to his claim. Oddly, Hitoshi understood it. Part of him was always convinced that Izuku was going to figure out that he could do better. I figured it out, but by then I realized it wouldn't be fair to the other people I wasn't telling that deserved to know. Fairness wasn't a concept that Hitoshi often bothered himself with. If he even did, Aizawa probably would have beaten it out of him. The world wasn't fair, and fairness especially wasn't for heroes. Heroes, according to his line of thinking, were there to protect other people from the fickle nature of reality. Izuku was probably talking about his mother, and Hitoshi could not make himself care about whether or not she was being treated equally. Whatever her thought process was, or if she'd really meant to do it, He couldn't forgive her for putting Izuku out of the house, and he didn't even want to. No more. Hitoshi struggled to put his thoughts into words. I don't care about other people. If we're going to be us, then I need to take priority, so no more secrets. Wait, that was dumb. Izuku was apparently the agency's chief intelligence officer. There were definitely going to be a lot of things he couldn't talk about. No more secrets about you, he corrected himself, reeling all over again by the fact that his boyfriend was a pro-hero. They were going to be heroes together. I won't hold anything back either, okay? Izuku went bright pink. Okay, yes, I can do that, he squeaked out. Does that mean that you still want to work here? With me? Us, I mean? You don't have to be in intelligence if you're not comfortable working with me. Hideo could be your supervisor. He likes you. Oh, hell no, Hitoshi replied flatly. You're not sticking me in the same department as an aged-up Bakugo. That's, fair, Izuku allowed. To be honest, your job is mostly going to be yelling at me, and Hideo is going to be in charge of everyone's fitness reports, so maybe it wouldn't be too weird. I want the job, Hitoshi admitted. Their conversation had done one thing for him, at least. He could finally see a niche for himself in Watchtower. His quirk and support weapons were ideal for a quick, stealthy takedown and personnel extraction. I want the job as offered. I especially want it now that I know that you're out there spying on people. Wow. Negotiating your contract is going to be awkward. Izuku leaned back and smacked his own cheeks. Oh, man. That's another thing. An idea occurred to Hitoshi just then. It was petty, but it was the exact right kind of petty. You better pay me top dollar because we, he paused to point back and forth between them, are moving in together. No more arguments, and I get to pick out our new place. Okay. Izuku's blush intensified. I already agreed, but okay. No, you gave me a huge speech about the transient nature of childhood and avoided giving me a clear answer. Hitoshi corrected him. I was trying to say yes while also giving you an escape route if you wanted it, but that's fair too, Izuku winced. I'll try to be better about that. I would appreciate it. Hitoshi would believe it when he saw it, but didn't want to say it to his boyfriend's face. Then, because he couldn't help it, he scooped Izuku back up into another hug. That time he returned it with a grip that was just shy of crushing. It got a little less romantic after that, because Izuku was in charge of new hire paperwork, which was deeply unromantic, yet also necessary. Izuku's office was one in the corner suites, and he only had a desk in it so far, with 2 folding chairs. They bickered a bit over Hitoshi's wage until settling on a number he could live with, until Izuku marked it up 15% on the final draft of his offer letter. I was going to do that from the start, before I even knew it was you, he explained when Hitoshi put him into an outraged headlock. I'm really annoying when I'm chasing a lead, and that's an apology in advance. Sorry, Toshi. He paused, looking like he was debating his next words. I also wanted to see if you'd argue with me, if you needed to. That was fair. I can tell you no when I want to. Hitoshi lied. He couldn't. He could probably manage it in the field where there was actual danger involved, but not often in the general scheme of things otherwise. Looks like you can. Izuku handed him more forms to fill out, and he walked him through an informational packet that was explaining their property damage insurance, and spent half an hour scanning his various biometrics to add him into the security system. Hitoshi hoped that they'd get a manager soon, because he wasn't sure if he could handle having his boyfriend be his field partner, his immediate boss, and his HR representative. It was a relief once all the contracts were signed, and Hitoshi's suit was safe in his costume vault, because that was it. He'd made his choices, and all he had to do after that was live with them. We should probably check on everyone downstairs. That, too, was a lie. Hitoshi did not want to deal with more people. He wanted to go home and start looking at apartment listings, preferably with Izuku tucked into his side. I suppose so, Izuku agreed, looking about as enthusiastic. He almost shot Hitoshi a concerning sideways look. How do you want to handle this? Us at work, I mean. Well, one of the recruits is Uraraka. Hitoshi thought about it. She knows our private identities are together, so unless you want to go suited up in the office all the time, I think the cat's already out of the bag. That got Izuku's attention. He perked right up. Ocha's applying with us? Toshi, that's amazing! He bounced on his toes. I've been a huge fan of Aravity since your first-year sports festival. Yeah? Actually, it made sense. I guess anyone who drops a ton of cement shards on Bakugo is probably a hero in your book. Well, yes, even though he still won, which was disappointing. She was super cool, though. Izuku shifted back and forth with nervous energy. It would be weird to ask for her autograph, wouldn't it? It's weird. I shouldn't. I want to, though. Where was all this when I introduced you to Present Mike and Eraserhead? Hitoshi wanted to know. They started towards the stairs. I spent that entire afternoon and evening screaming inside my head, Izuku admitted, and let his knuckles brush deliberately against Hitoshi's, who took the hint and laced their fingers together. Little by little, he came around to believing that they really were okay. Well, I was excited to meet Mike. I listened to all his shows, but I've worked with Eraserhead before. The glamour kind of fades a little after someone's thrown up on you. Hitoshi stopped. Wait, you and Aizawa know each other? More importantly, what had they been doing to make Aizawa lose his lunch? Izuku shook his head. No is a strong word. I don't think he actually remembers me, and I would have been suited up anyways. We were both on a raid together, and he got clobbered by someone with a stone manipulation quirk. He was a high-priority target since the lead villain was an emitter. I was on support duty, evacuating, walking around, wounded, and Tower was providing mid-range fire support. Eraserhead wouldn't describe his injuries, so I escorted him off the field and about halfway to the fallback station. Bleh. Izuku laughed nervously. Anyway, that's how we figured out he had a concussion. We weren't introduced, and from what I heard, he didn't really retain memory again until after the field healers had treated him, so it's probable that he has no idea it even happened. The security doors obligingly responded to Hitoshi's palm print. He was so pleased by that he actually didn't notice anything was wrong until Izuku froze on the stairs. It took a second, but then Hitoshi recognized the gruff voice that was coming from the main level. Yeah, I know a guy. He'd probably take the job just to piss off his shitty old man. Top 5 Class A, though, so good fucking deal for you guys. No way, Izuku whispered. He turned a wide, betrayed look on Hitoshi. Kachan is one of the recruits you recommended, he hissed as they both scrambled back upstairs. I didn't. You think I'd do that to myself? Hitoshi insisted, but thought about it anyway. Oh, hell. He was in the group chat when I was talking to Uraraka, though. I told her Tower was Bakugo in 20 years. He must have gotten curious. But he already had a job with Best Jeanist. I swear he did. Then, Izuku frowned. Hideo said both recruits already accepted their offer letters. That means he'd left his first job for this? He rubbed the back of his head. I'm kind of flattered. I wonder what the draw was. Best Jeanist is the current number 4 nationally. They had offer letters and you didn't know Bakugo was an applicant? Izuku shook his head. I just gave Hideo a template letter and notes for negotiating their salaries. They're his people, and I stayed out of the hiring process because I look 15 on a good day, if I don't shave. Nobody would take us seriously. He waved to Hitoshi to follow him. It turned out what Hitoshi had originally thought was a utility closet was actually where they'd put the security monitors. Izuku brought up the feed for the lobby. Take him if we can afford him, Tower was in the middle of saying. He was standing next to Uraraka, who'd perched on the empty reception desk. He had his elbow planted on top of Bakugo's head, who had driven his up into Tower's ribs in retaliation. Neither of them seemed particularly bothered. Can't imagine we can match whatever Endeavor can cough up. Endeavor is... Uraraka considered her next words. He's a lot better than he used to be, but I think Todoroki-kun would still appreciate getting some independence. I don't know how bad it is, or how it got, but negative habits are difficult to break no matter how hard you're trying. He hasn't accepted any offers yet because most of the recruiters seem to think that he'll act as a liaison with Endeavor's agency or something. Oi, are we going to meet the other guys anytime soon? Bakugo shoved Tower's arm up, but he didn't follow up with another attack. It was kind of weird to see him roughhousing like a normal person did without going in for a kill. Tower coughed to hide his discomfort. To be real honest, kid, I kind of just screwed the pooch on something. Watchman and Siren are patching it up, but they might need some space. I don't think we'll be seeing them today. He paused and added lower. In fact, if you do see them looking for me, and they seem pissed off, then you don't know me. You've never even heard of me, or where I might have gone. Because it was Bakugo, he said, "What kind of hero are you?" "The kind who doesn't like getting a boot up his ass," Tower replied without any heat and then sighed. "I probably deserve it, though." Izuku and Hitoshi shared a long look. "Want to escape out of the roof access?" Izuku asked at last. "That is the best thing that you've said to me all night." "You want to explain why you bailed on me?" "You managed to hire both my boyfriend and schoolyard bully without me knowing." "How? Musutafu isn't that small." "You're... Ah, fuck. Seriously? Bakugo is fucking Kachan?" After a lot of personal growth and some medical intervention, apparently. Of course you know about his implant. Yeah, he's got intermittent explosion disorder. He's diagnosed at UA. The regulator keeps him from popping off. He disclosed it in the interview, and his known triggers. I was going to ask about increasing our mental health coverage to cover more psychotherapy. Googling it. Huh. Well, that explains a lot about middle school and elementary. Do you want to keep him? It's your call. He left a really fucking good job to work here, kid. Can't say I know why, but he did. Just said he had some stuff he wanted to work on. I'm okay with it if he decides he wants to stay. You like him, Uraraka gets along with him. We'd be stupid to reject a top graduate of UA who meshes well with his team because he was a jerk when he was 14. We're just going to have to handle the me conversation really carefully. Pretty sure I'm one of those known triggers. Yeah, no kiddin'. Hey, you and Sai okay? We are. I gave him the Cliff Notes version of why we started Watchtower. He wasn't happy about being kept in the dark, but not all that mad. He still signed, made a few personal demands, but they were reasonable. Demands like what? We are for sure moving in together, and he gets to pick the new apartment. Also, we're getting a cat, apparently. Like, maybe a lot of cats. Okay, that's really fucking normal, but okay. Not sure I'd have used my get anything I want, no arguments ticket on some cats, and something you two were going to do anyway. You do you, though. He wanted an excuse to forgive me. He does that. We're probably going to have this fight a few more times, before he can lay it to rest. This is why I don't date. You don't date because you're still hung up on that single mom. We do not speak about that. Sure we don't. All right, everyone. So this concludes part 4 of Paper Agency. I'll be back with part 5. Hope you guys are still enjoying this one. I'm glad that Hitoshi finally knows. Took a while for the reveal there. As always, I appreciate your all support. Leave your reactions below, and thank you so much for listening.